Yeah, let's pray. Just before Steve brings us the word. Thank you, Lord Jesus, for Steve, for our brother and friend here, Grace Church. Thank you for his relationship with you and for his time spent reading your word, hearing what you have to say for us today. So we just invite you, Lord, to speak through him, and we thank you for him, for the friend that he is to all of us. We just look forward to hearing what you have to say to us today. Lord Jesus. Amen.
So interesting. We're going to get to dive into that time where Jesus carried out a premeditated act of aggression against other people and some animals. So when there's a common phrase we say, what would Jesus do? We used to have bracelets back in the day. I haven't seen them so much often, but these bracelets usually Christian youth would wear as a kind of way to remind themselves that, you know, I'm a Christian and I need to remember what Jesus would do. It was also a way that I remember, like, to let other Christians know, like, hey, we're kind of in the same club. But what would Jesus do? Well, what we just heard, I think a lot of people would say, well, not that. You know, like, what am I supposed to do in this situation? Well, not throw over tables of money and whip people and chase animals. I don't think that's what Jesus would do. But I think that when you go take the time, you go through the Gospels, you find that this Jesus that everybody in the world says they know so well, Jesus would do that, so Christians should do that. Jesus would do this, so Christians would do this. Jesus would not do that, so Christians should not do that. And you know, the people who have the most opinions are the people who aren't Christians. They think that they know this Jesus, but if we open up the scripture and say, listen, take some time, read the red letters, see what this guy is doing. It's important to know that because, you know, we need to let people know who Jesus is. We're taking this time to go through these teachings of Jesus that are a little bit harder to kind of process and take in because they're not popular. And actually, what they all do is that they say, actually, there is a cost associated with following this one, following this Savior. And it's important for us to dig in to know this because how are we going to follow this Jesus? How are we going to be a representation of him to this world if we don't know, right? And I think that when you look at stories like this account of him in the temple, this event that happened, you have the opportunity, just like those people in that time, to either be offended or to open your heart to see what God wants to do there. And I think it's important to note that all through the history of the church, there have been people being offended by what God is doing. And out of that offense comes a new kind of splice of the church that says, you know what, we're not for that. Or the people say, hey, we were part of it, we're all about it, what Jesus was doing. And we see here, Jesus was doing something, and I bet most people didn't really appreciate what he was doing. I'm sure we see that after this, he gets questioned by people, like, what gives you the right to do this? And I also wonder if his disciples would have wondered why he was doing that too, because that's the way things had been. They maybe didn't see things are wrong with the way things were. So let's dive into the accounts really quick. So the account that we just heard is in John. And this happens in the beginning of Jesus' ministry. And it says it's in the first of 3 Passovers. We know that his ministry was for 3 years, right? But in Mark, and Luke, this account is happening towards the end of his ministry. This is like during Passion Week. And so some conclude that this happened actually more than once. One account, he says, hey, you're making this a marketplace. The other accounts, he's calling it a den of thieves. It gets more severe. As I was going through this, I was wondering, did Jesus have a habit of going into the temple and like this causing disruption? So I want to give some more context though, because I think it's important for us to know what stirred up this in Jesus, okay? So just so we know what's going on at this time. So this scene happened in the outer court, or the court of the Gentiles. So the temple had all these different courts. The Gentile court was quite big, and it was off to the side. But to get closer to the temple, you had to go through the women's court, and then beyond that was another smaller temple, and it was courtyard, and there was the court of the men, and they had a court of the priests. There's other courts, basketball court, I don't know. It was Herod's temple. He liked courts. I don't know. So, but there was this big space that was the Gentiles' court. and if for non-Jews coming in to pay their respects to God, that's where they had to go. And this is where the scene happened. Also, why were there money changes there? Because if you were a Jewish man over 20 years old, you had to pay a temple tax. And if you're traveling, you had to change your foreign currency. But also, the temple would only accept a particular currency for the temple tax. Just so happened to be the currency that had the most silver in it. But you had whatever you had to change it for that. But the taxes had to be paid. It was part of what needed to be done. And they sold animals there, and that was as a convenience to the worshipers. Because you're coming from who knows how far away. Can you imagine taking this, very, very long journey? You got to bring your own goat the whole way. And then maybe during that long journey, you just see more of that goat's cute personality and its character. And then you get to the temple, and you're like, oh, I got to sacrifice this thing. It could ruin all the Passover, right? Because you just built this attachment to your animal. So it's easy to get your animal there at the temple, because I know this animal. It's right there. Don't got to lead it. We're going to kill it there. It's the sacrifice. And actually, that was part of worship. Part of Passover was to bring a sacrifice, and it was required. So taxes and money changing was required. Having a sacrifice was required. So why was Jesus getting so upset about it? It was in the wrong place. So what we're going to do, we're going to recreate the scene. All right, so I need a few adults to be my Gentile worshipers. I need you just to stand in front of me. So can I get 4? I need 4 adults to come up front. Thank you, Phil. Come on, be brave. 4. I need 3 more. Thank you. 2 more. 2 more adults. Come on. Yeah, Karen, come on here. Great. So while you guys are here, your task is I want you just to be trying to meditate on God and His goodness, okay? That's your job. Okay, I want you, children, I need you in 2 groups. I need half of you over here and half of you over there. Split up. How much you got? It was 3, 2, yeah, come over here. I need one more over here. I need one more over here. Okay, so you guys are going to be cows. You are going to be sheep. I need one other person. What sound does a dove make? Anyone know? A dove?
I don't know.
Yeah, they kind of coo. I need one. Who's going to be my dove? I need one other person. Grace, you want to be the dove? Yes. Grace and Reed. Yes. Here, you stand over by the sheep. Okay, and then I need to have some money changers. James, can I pick on you? You're a money changer. Toby, can you pair up with James? Because he's changing your money, and you're not too happy with the exchange rate you're getting, okay? You guys are going to be arguing in a minute. And then we also need to have, I think they pretty much covers it, right? Yeah, we have. Wait, I need,
Jesus.
no?
He does need you.
Yeah. Okay, so here we go. I want worshipers begin focusing on Jesus. Sheep, begin making your noise. Make it louder, sheep. Sheep, okay. I need the doves to start going brr, brr. Okay, doves start making noise. I need the cows to start mooing. I need everyone keep going. Don't stop. It's all happening at once. Now we need to have a heated argument back there. Exchange rates are not fair. All right. Okay, and then there's some jingling of money. And then there's someone maybe not selling popcorn, but there's a lot of distractions. How easy is it for you worshipers right now to focus on the Lord and His goodness? Come on. Press in. You traveled all this way to worship. Come on, don't waste the opportunity. Okay, thank you. Stop. That was the scene that Jesus just walked into in the Gentile court. So you can take your seats again. Thank you, everyone. It was a great demonstration. Yeah, it's clap. It's just how I thought it would be. Just hectic. Then coming into this, we know his reaction. Jesus does not actually just get stirred up with anger in the moment and then do something. He actually leaves. In the book of Mark, it says he comes back the next day. It takes a whole day to kind of decide what he's going to do. But here, he leaves. He takes time to make a whip. He's thinking of, what can I do to make people scared of me coming towards them, that they will get out of this place quickly? So he's putting together a whip. I don't know how fancy it was, but I mean, he was a carpenter, so I'm sure he had some good craftsmanship towards this thing. So, and then he goes in there and he's chasing the animals, he's chasing the doves, he's knocking over tables. And when I was reading this so many times, I have a pretty vivid imagination, so I was trying to figure out, like, what did it look like? What did he sound like? What were his mannerisms like as he was doing this? My favorite one is that he did it kind of like a bad cat, just kind of looking at you and slowly just pushing money off the table. But we don't know. The fact is, he made a scene. So what does he say? Phil said, in the translation that Phil read from, what did it say?
Oh, sorry.
It says you made it a place for trading.
Yeah.
Yeah. In my translation, I was reading, it said, you've turned my father's house into a marketplace. It says, get these out of here, stop turning my father's house into a marketplace. But in Mark, I feel like it shows a lot more Jesus' heart as to why he was feeling the way he was feeling. And it reveals a bit more. It says, and as he was teaching them, this means he's taking time to settle down and talk to people. It says, as he was teaching them, he said, is it not written, my house shall be called a house of prayer for all the nations, but you have made it a den of thieves. Now, where was the marketplace happening? I said it was the court of the Gentiles. Gentiles are not Jews, right? And so what was happening is that everyone from all the nations was coming to worship and sacrifice, and there was this marketplace set up there, making it a little bit difficult for them, right? So so I don't believe that this was like the tantrum in the temple. The tantrum in the temple, as some people have kind of labeled it. I think that Jesus was very precise in what he meant to do. It wasn't like Jesus was feeling a lot of emotions and they got the better of him and he kind of exploded. It was a strong and definite judgment on what was happening in the temple. Just as an aside, as Christians, as the church, we have to make judgments on things in this world. And people will tell us, you shouldn't judge, And there are lots of Christians who bite their lip because they feel like, well, I shouldn't judge. But Jesus told us not to be hypocrites. So take care of the law. But then there are times when you need to make a judgment on what's happening in the world. Otherwise, how are they going to know the way to righteousness? Right? So why this reaction, Jesus? Why did you make a mess? Why did you throw over tables of money? Well, his father's house was a house of prayer, not a marketplace. The difference between those two things is which way the transactions are going. In a marketplace, our transactions are, they're horizontal, right? I give you this, I give you that. In worship, the transaction is vertical. I offer this, something's coming down. I mean, there's some kind of sharing going this way, correct? That's why our time of worship here is special. That's why we should have anticipation for what we can get, because we're coming to offer something up, and we're here to just wait and see whatever comes down. And just being in God's presence is a joy in and of itself. Also, the Father's house, it was for ministry, not for profiting. We've seen that when what we can get from ministry becomes more of a focus, we become more like an organization, we become more pharisaical. The Pharisees are very practical people. They, hey, this is going to work. We don't care that it doesn't work for you, Gentiles, but it makes sense that our worshipers are coming. We want them to have a good worship experience, and this is going to make it easy for people to get their stuff right away. It might be a little bit noisy, but we think you can handle it. You've endured a long journey. You can endure a couple of sheep making noise and messing over in the corner, right? Reasoning things away because there's some profit to be gained. Yeah, and like we mentioned, the house is it's for all people, not just for the Jews. And so Jesus disrupts everything to call it back into order. And I think sometimes we need to be prepared for Jesus to disrupt things in us and around us, because he so desperately wants to bring order, because he knows how much it's going to bless us. He had to make a very big scene to get everyone's attention, to be able to show them the correct way and to remind them what it was supposed to be. And I think the severity of Jesus' reaction to his own conviction about how do we honor my Father's house, that should convict us about what we do with our own convictions. So what did you do the last time you felt the conviction of the Holy Spirit in your heart? Sometimes I know myself, I felt the conviction of the Holy Spirit about something that's going around me or something that's in me, and I just continue just to push forward and just to do whatever I want. I continue to push forward and just do things as I've done them. I go against my conviction, either because I just don't want to, and I want to listen to Jesus, or because it's too complicated, or it costs me too much, or make that person look at me different. I don't want to have that discussion, you know. So what did you do? Did you feel like you had the zeal of the Lord or the passion for God to actually follow through on that conviction? I think that's one thing we need to be aware of. We need to be cautious of those times that I felt conviction and did nothing about it. Then it's time to go. God's asked us to obey him. So he's going to give you what you need to fulfill that command. And so we need to be praying, saying, God, give me the grace to submit, to follow you into these convictions that I feel you have. And just at a practical note, if you feel like God's call, if you feel convicted about something that requires a big change in your life, a big shift, do not make that decision alone. God has you in a church for a reason, because we are a family, we are brothers and sisters. You have spiritual mothers, spiritual fathers, and you need to submit that so that the church can help you decide what does obedience look like, how to do it. The worst thing is when disconnected, immature Christians try to follow a conviction without fully kind of sorting it out, and it ends up as some really awkward tirade on the subway that everyone has to listen to, and they don't know what to do because this person's crazy. Spiritual father or mother could have told them how to do it a little better, I think. So before we get into it, how do we make these applications for ourselves? What do we take away from this for us? I just want to pray that our hearts are in a place where we can actually take what the Holy Spirit's kind of bringing to remembrance and actually put it into practice, because that's where actually the hard part is, right? The hard part is not listening to me tell you, this is what I think that we should do. The hard part is you feeling the conviction of the Holy Spirit and actually putting feet to it and letting it walk out for the rest of the week and making an actual shift. There was a moment where I realized I was doing it wrong, I repented, and I changed my direction, and I did something else, right? So let's pray for that now. God, we just ask that you would just send your Spirit right now. Just begin to remind us of times where there was things you want us to clean, and we didn't do it. Remind us of the last thing you told us to do, and we just haven't done it. Remind us of what you want us to be. God, you've spoken to us through dreams, maybe through prophecy. You spoke to us through your word. Maybe we have pictures of what we want to be for you, how we want to bring you glory, but we just haven't walked that out enough yet. We just ask Holy Spirit you begin to just shine on that more. Show us the next steps that we can take in obedience and in love for you. So first, let's define worship. We're talking about cleaning up worship. What is it? At its core, worship is sacrifice. I don't usually come in here, I don't usually engage in worship as a group thinking of, what am I going to sacrifice? This is actually quite fun. When we're together and there's music and there's singing, that's quite enjoyable, correct? So I'm thinking well, what's the sacrifice? It's important for us to kind of figure out what that is, because as far back as Cain and Abel, sacrifice has been the key mark of honoring God and giving worship. In Romans 12, it says, "Therefore I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship." So this kind of goes outside of our time of worship. This goes into your life. This is not everything you do is worship, but it can be worship if you're presenting it to God that way, correct? So worship is not involuntary. There has to be some intention on your part that I'm going to honor God. God, I'm going to give something to you. So here it is, me doing my job day to day. That can be worship if you've had the intention, you've presented it to God that way. People had to journey, from all different places to that temple to make the sacrifices during Jesus' time. There was sacrifice involved there, and we have to keep the intention to go to God with something, not showing up like I'm just going to show up and whatever happens happens, but coming 2 times of worship, whether they're together or privately, saying I'm coming with something to give to you. And actually that means getting a little bit more than we want to. I think it's easy for us to I'm going to come and worship just like I always worshiped, because that's what I'm good at. I have no problem doing that. But there is usually a part in our, I think don't think so much just about worship as we did here this morning. Think about worship, how you serve people, how you give yourself to others to honor God. What do you give up of yourself? There's usually a limit we keep for ourselves. But finding out where God wants you to give just a little bit more. Where it kind of maybe starts to sting just a little bit, or you feel the cost a little bit. And making the choice to, I'm going to offer this up. So worship is sacrifice. So what can we do to actually make our worship more pure, more satisfactory to God? Well, if we're really looking at this scene that Jesus walked into, part of the reason that stuff was there was for convenience. So it's resisting convenient worship. So those outer courts, that was the closest place you can get to your point where you're going to give your sacrifice. The closest point you get was right there in the Gentiles' court. And that's where they put it, the most convenient place. It could have been just put outside of the temple. That would have been fine. Jesus would not have had an issue with that. But they put it inside. And I think when we have too much convenience, we become lazy worshipers. We end up bringing less of ourselves, and what happens when, especially as a community church, if all the worship is being brought for you, we've got everything. You just walk into it; it's all ready for you. You don't got to bring anything of yourself. All the revelation, all the knowledge, all the biblical instruction, we're going to provide it all. You don't have to go for anything yourself. You can coast for a long time on that, and living for Jesus is going to be easy until it's not. The moment your own life experiences some shifting, some conflict, you're struck with the truth that, oh my goodness, I don't know how to meet God in worship myself. I don't know how to go to the source myself and get anything or offer anything. Everyone else has always been doing it for me, and I feel like I'm a good worshiper because I just follow the other worshipers. How do we worship on our own? When we have a storm come into our life, do you have knowledge of who God is, who Jesus is, through the Word of God? Have you been digging in and finding out who He is and what His promises are for you? Or are you just kind of like borrowing it from someone else all the time? So this is the thing about the convenience factor, is that it can serve us and it can help us and it's good for us, but too much of it just makes us lazy. We have to make the decision, I'm going to go after it myself. I'm going to put more work into what I'm bringing to God. And convenient worship, it can be cheap. And what that means is that it has little cost for us directly, and we only give out of our abundance. We never give more than what we want to give. And I think when you read Scripture, it talks about sacrifice of praise. What does that mean? That means I'm praising a little bit harder than I really want to right now. That means I'm praising in a way that makes me a little self-conscious. I'm a little uncomfortable with it, but I'm doing it because I feel this is what God's requiring me, and I'm doing it out of obedience. So it's out of wanting to be obedient, not being compelled, but because you love God and you want to be obedient that you would do that. So there's no pressure to go beyond your comfort zone just because, oh, you should. But in your own heart, you know what God wants from you. You can sense that stuff and follow it. Second thing to point out with this scene is that profit and religion don't mix very well. I wanted to say money and religion, but I want to clarify a little bit. Charity is not profit, and Christians, we shine here. So in 2017, I couldn't find it. In 2017, Washington Times reported that Christian households, they gave twice as much as no-faith households. And you can find a lot more statistics showing just how much good Christians, individual Christians, have done with their own resources, with money. What Christian companies have done with their money. There's been a lot of good stuff happening. My sister, she's very artistic, and she had this burden to raise money to help orphans. She's had this dream in her heart, and she told our pastor, they just had this talk, and they talked about this idea and brought in the right people to make this kind of thing come together over a couple of months. And what ended up happening is they had an event called Art for the Heart of Africa. And we were going to gather regional artists to donate art, to make art. And it was just some amazing stuff was given to this thing. And it was just a huge event. It was an art auction. You came in, and all the proceeds, 100%, went to one particular orphanage in Africa. Someone had a contact and knew that things needed to be improved for these children. And the event ended up going on for 12 years. It's still going on. But now that one orphanage is so set, they've gotten new everything, new buildings, expanded, and they have such a greater capacity now. There's stuff set up for all these kids all the way through the time that they're time to leave the orphanage and they're adults. Everything's been thought of, paid for, set up through Christians saying, I'm gonna buy this art for extremely, usually you're way overpaying for some of this stuff. But so to date, they've raised $250,000, and now they're moving to India because that orphanage is set. They're moving on to another orphanage now. But that's just an example that I know from my own life of Christians doing really well. But there's this other side. We need to be extra careful about mixing money with our faith. If you want to look at Christian history, we could see things like indulgences. People could pay for forgiveness of their sins, and if you're wealthy enough, you just keep sinning and just pay it off, and you were told you're okay. That was wrong. We see that there was the church was funding colonialism, slavery. There was profit to be gained. And there was awful things done all around the world because the church had something to gain, and their motives weren't pure, and they were still cleaning up this stuff and these injustices that have happened, hundreds of years back. We're still cleaning it up, still being addressed. And the church should not have had a part in that. The last part that I want us to just really focus on is Jesus was talking about cleansing out a temple, but where's the temple now? Who knows? Where's the temple? Yeah, we're the temple. Jesus was trying to protect the worship environment in that temple. You need to protect your devotional life. We need to preserve these times of where we connect with God through prayer and through worship. So what's working for you? This is the time I'm just going to this is a struggle I think all of us have. I don't pray enough. I don't read my Bible enough. I don't do worship on my own enough. But some of us, we have. Has anyone here in the last couple years had breakthrough in these areas of personal devotion? You would say, oh yeah, the last few years I've done better than I was a couple years ago. Any hands? What? Cool. A little higher. Encourage us. We need to know that there's hope. Awesome. Can anyone be brave enough to share what worked? What worked for you to make the shift?
I'd say it was carving out more effective time and a lot more stillness and meditation.
So, but carving out time for silence has been key.
Silence, yes, silence is like the hardest thing the Lord can do.
Yeah, that's so hard.
Yeah.
Anyone else want to share?
Routine. Just get a routine and stick to your routine. Make time and then stick to it. Like get into the habit of sticking to your routine.
Like limiting commitments. Karen, do you want to share? You look at your line. Getting ready to.
I got more serious about Bible reading and stuff. So I found that scripture reading time for me, and then I know exactly what I'm reading. So I get all my different answers. Good. Reading the Bible in 1 year, and if I had like the chapters, laid out, and that would be good.
Great. So these are all strategies that can be used to protect that time in your own life for prayer and for worship. And we see that Jesus was quite protected as well. So we can follow his example and preserve these times. I think it's important to notice that even good things can get in the way. The money changing and the sacrifices were actually good things that were helping people, but they were distracting. And I think that sometimes one of the things when you think about even in churches, when we're together with believers, is the good things are catching up, small talk. But too much of it, guess what? You have no time to actually focus on God, right? Things like if you have too many announcements, or put them in the wrong place, or fika breaks at the wrong time, can interrupt what God was actually doing. And I've been in places where the schedule was so kind of rigid, and that there would be times when the people who were very sensitive to what the Holy Spirit was doing in the place, and they were excited about what was happening in the time of worship, and it just kind of was a cut. Whether God was done or not, we're just going to move on. And actually, there was some opportunities lost there. It's just because, things can wait. We need to be more flexible, I think, when we're waiting on God to come in and do stuff when we're together. Yes. So Jesus is calling us to all these distractions that come up that make it so we're not praying, we're not actually worshiping very often, we're not worshiping it with a pure heart, we're not sacrificing praise. He wants us to find these things that are preventing us and wants us to chase them out. So external things, we've talked about overcommitting. We have schedules that are too busy. There's too much noise. Yes, we've got to get away from noise. Maybe Netflix needs to turn off because who cares if you need to finish that season tonight. But those are the external things that get in the way of our time with God. But I want to also just highlight this internal things. And I think sometimes we just need to be reminded that there's internal things. They may be insecurities or self-consciousness. It could be anger. It could be worry that's taking away from your worship. And those are things that we need to take to the Lord and say, look, this is here. It's really a part of what I'm dealing with now. What do we do with it, Jesus? And out of his goodness and out of his grace, he's gonna show you how you can overcome that and how you can become a more free worshiper, a more sacrificial worshiper. So you can be clean. You can be a clean temple ready for this amazing worship. We've been called to it, so it is possible. I don't want us to get weighed down with, it's just more I have to do. No, you don't have to do anything. God's love for you is consistent, it's not changing, but your experience with him can change. And so it's important for us to remember that Jesus is on our side. Jesus is not going to come and whip us. We're the worshipers. You know what he's going after with that whip? Everything else. Everything else that's coming against us. Everything else that's standing between us and him. That's what he'll go after. But he loves us. You can see his love is quite intense. That he loved his Father's temple so much that he was willing to go ahead and do what he did. And how much does he love us? He demonstrated it for us on the cross. He's willing to go through some pretty extreme measures to make sure that we're united with him. And he said he's going to build his church. And he said he's going to complete his work in you. So these areas where we see, I need to clean this up in my heart, in my worship toward God, it can happen. Submit it to God. He's going to clean it out for you. It may take longer for some of us than others, but God's going to do the work. And Jesus, he's going to accept you how you are, with all the issues that we have, but we also remember that he doesn't let you stay that way. So if the Spirit of God is in you, you're the temple of God. You were made to worship. You were made to reflect his glory to the world. That's a big point. That you would reflect the glory of God. And that's what's the gain out of rooting these things out and chasing these things out of our lives, that we can reflect more of his glory. And we just want to be grateful, right, that Jesus loves us so much, that he's willing to make us seen. He's willing to go out to uncomfortable places to come and make way for us to worship, make way for us to encounter him, to make way for us to obey him. He's willing to do all the work for us. We just need to just make sure that we're following him. He's gone ahead of us. So let's pray right now. Can I ask you to stand up? God, we just want to just confess our need for you. That we want to confess that there's more worship in our lives and how we live that we can offer up to you that can please you. God, we just ask, Lord, that you would begin to just show us what it is you want from us. And let us see you more so we can love you more. We can have a greater adoration for you. So that these incremental sacrifices or these big sacrifices, they just wouldn't seem so big because our love for you is so big. Of course we'd get that for Jesus. And God, we ask you just give us the grace to honor whatever it is you ask us. That you would just empower us by your Holy Spirit to follow you wherever you call us to. That you would show us what sacrifice it is that's going to bless your heart, so that we could do that and we could please you. And we ask, Lord, that as we do this, we could see more and more of your glory in our life. That through the act of our daily surrendering and laying down our lives and figuring out how to dedicate more of our day-to-day as worship, that your presence would just kind of grow, and that your favor and that your work would be seen by people all around us, because we are the temple of the Holy Spirit. God, give us an expectation for what that could be. God, you can sit down.
Thanks, Steve. Why don't we just finish with the song? Now you sit down. Just let Joe come up. And we'll end there after one more song. Thanks, Joe.
Okay, thanks, Wilson Steve. Yeah, let's just fix our eyes on Jesus one more time as we sing together. When the music fades and all is stripped away, and I simply come longing just to bring something that's of worth that will bless your heart. And I'll bring you more than a song, for a song in itself is not what you have required. You search much deeper within, through the way things have been. You're looking into my heart, and I'm coming back to the heart of worship, and it's all about you. It's all about you, Jesus. I'm sorry, Lord, for the thing I've made, when it's all about you. It's all about you, Jesus. King of endless worth, no one could express how much you deserve. Though I'm weak and poor, all I have is yours, every single breath. So I'll bring you more than a song, for a song in itself is not what you have required. You search much deeper within, through the way things have been. You're looking into my heart, and I'm coming back to the heart of worship, and it's all about you. It's all about you, Jesus. I'm sorry, Lord, for the thing I've made, when it's all about you. It's all about you, Jesus. And I'm coming back to the heart of worship, and it's all about you. It's all about you, Jesus. I'm sorry, Lord, for the thing I've made. It's all about you, Lord. It's all about you, Jesus.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks for worship. Really great. Just to say before we go, Steve gave a really great talk, and I was challenged to think about things in my life and things to pray about. Just to let you know that Steve and Donna and a few others will be here and available at front if you'd like to pray about anything now. Respond to anything now already that you felt God prompting in your heart. So know that there's always people available and willing to pray with you right here on a Sunday. So don't let things leave with you without being prayed for or without discussing with someone if you'd like to. Otherwise, thank you so much for coming. Really cool to see you all. I hope you have a wonderful Sunday.
Thanks, Ross. Well done, Ross. Great job.
Like a little slow
Yeah, that's,
Sorry about all the technical
yeah.
issues. It just took a while.
Sometimes it does. I just stop there.
Cheers, mate.